Welcome back, everyone, to another episode. Today, we are speaking with Michael Laidler. Michael is a professional speaker and best selling author. He helps organizations overcome fatigue and achieve fulfillment through personal and leadership development. My favorite jam. Michael, welcome to the show.
Man, thank you. As I mentioned earlier, I'm in South Korea right now, but I knew, especially planning for this for almost a year, that I had to make your show. I'm excited to be here and just deliver whatever I can to your audience.
I appreciate you not only taking the time to be with us on the show, but for making the adjustments from your angle all the way in Korea. It's amazing. You're probably one of the first that are off station when we're recording this, and this is so great and great to have you. Now, folks, we will be speaking about navigating leadership fatigue with resilience and renewed energy. And I know, Michael, that in today's climate, with so much going on all around us and even in our own backyard, that it's time for some folks that are looking for how to make it through with resilience and some type of energy. But before we get into that, tell us a little bit about you and your background.
You know, I- at in 2024, this is my 19th year in law enforcement, but that's not actually where it started. Born and raised in Miami, single mom, me, her, my sister, my grandmother grew up, and some of the challenges that we face, like homelessness, not having electricity, just having ramen noodle summers. If you ever had one of those, you completely understand how that goes. Actually, it was ramen noodles and hot dogs because we had to have a little bit of protein in there. Taught me a lot about myself. And where I saw the growth really, really change was when I was in my mid 30s. And I started to reflect on a lot of those things that happened to me, not in a negative way, but kind of highlighting some of the things I needed to do. And it was amazing how I looked at things like resilience. I looked at things like fatigue. I just challenged myself in a different way. And since that time, it's really elevated me. So, with that law enforcement, I've been in three different law enforcement agencies. I've been a police officer, a border patrol agent, federal corrections. Needless to say, it's a very stressful industry. I have one son. He's 10. He's actually texting me now because what I've learned is when I've developed a business, if you build that foundation, you start building your kingdom, people want to be part of it. And my son, he wants to be part of it. And he's actually been editing videos for me just very recently because he really wants to come to this journey with me. And I say all that to say is that, with that being me in a nutshell, it's amazing how each of us have things that we've gone through. And if we turn those into positives and strengths, that's where we really see a big difference in how we move forward.
And I love the fact that your son wants to be part of your journey. That is a testament to you as a leader, as a man, as a father, that where you're headed and what you're doing is impactful. And first in the house, right? That's where I say the most impact should be reflected in is in the house. So kudos to you and congratulations on your son for getting his hands in the mix. Now, when it comes to signs of fatigue and stress. All of us find it in one way or another, right? We experience
Mm.
this as leaders. So, how can we distinguish between regular stress and fatigue that requires attention?
It's always interesting to be able to answer a question like that because for me, what I've discovered about myself, and if anybody ever wants a case study, do it on you. Trust me. I was speaking with a individual a couple of months ago, and he was telling me how, man, I haven't really been through anything. And I'm like, you're in your 40s. You've probably been through a lot more than what you realize, but you have to take a look at yourself in order to truly understand what you've been through. So for me, I think it's easy to hide stress. I think it's easy to hide fatigue, but there's always that point where that natural stress that you're going to have, let's say waking up at 6 a.m. or having a newborn, which I don't have one, but I had one, it's understandable. But when you start seeing other areas in your life impacted, especially in a negative manner, that's when you start realizing fatigue is taking over, especially mental fatigue. Obviously, we understand physical fatigue. We understand if you never ran before, you start running 3 miles, you're going to be tired. But when your mind stops processing things like it used to, that's when you know it's time to go get help. And that doesn't mean you have to go through a therapist or a counselor, which I love both of them. I see a therapist, I love her. But you have to start reworking your schedule and understanding that if certain needs aren't being met, if your brain's not slowing down through processes like renewal, then you're not going to be at your highest performance. And whatever you do, our time is short. The average lifespan is what, in the 80s in the US or 90s? That's not that long to be here. And if you find yourself in a constant level of fatigue, you're never going to hit that peak, or you're not going to be at that peak for long. Our lives are short. And when we're looking at all these different areas, for me, when it goes from stress to fatigue, that's when you know that performance is changing. And that's when it's time to recognize all those other signs of I'm not hitting my benchmarks. I'm not hitting my goals as quickly as I used to. I find myself in arguments with my family. I find myself going out with my peers. I find myself not wanting to reach out and cold call a future client. Those are all signs that fatigue is taking place. And once you start hitting those, that's when it's time to take that step back and say, what can I do to overcome some of these areas?
Yeah, great points there. And for those that are listening, sometimes masking this for too long can end up in a very, very bad situation. So, if you are in that stress, fatigue stage and you're trying to keep continuing to press through, it's time for you to be real with yourself and take those indicators that you just mentioned,
Mhm.
Michael, and start doing something about it. Because um yeah, I give you an example. A young 44-year-old brother mine, out of nowhere, boom, cardiac arrest, he's gone. And so there
Mhm.
was a lot of stresses there. There was something, obviously, some medical things
Of course.
going on, but what did he push to the side? What did he not
Mhm.
address for the sake of this or that? And so we don't want that to happen to anybody else. So now you mentioned these indicators, these ways of going through and saying,
Mhm.
hey, we got to identify. So what are some effective strategies for leaders to manage their energy levels and prevent burnout amidst demanding workloads and responsibilities? Because it seems like people want more for less.
Absolutely. For me, and I can go back to starting off, let's go back to the masking side. I've been in law enforcement nearly 2 decades, 19 years. And it's always been kind of easy to mask things because you kind of learn how to do that in high stress environments. Same thing with being in the military. You learn that that bad day is probably not that bad. Where it really is bad, it's just that we hide it. So for me, as I look back at those situations and I started to figure out how to address them, I didn't have the answer. I mean, I told you before, my stories was in mid 30s when I started to realize that, you know what, I need to start combating some of this fatigue. I need to start figuring out how to channel my energy. It really comes down to something that we hear about through college, through school, is really time management. And you're like, time management, think about it. We only have 24 hours in a day. No matter who you are, no matter how great you are, no matter if you're the Elon Musk of the world or you don't even have a place to live, you still have 24 hours in your day to make the most. As leaders, you need to control that time so it doesn't control you. For me, something that I started to do and I continuously do, which I have found that helps me out a lot, allows me to come do vacations like this in South Korea, is I have something called the 24-hour formula. And what that is that you plan your whole day, hour by hour, in this formula. You plug in things like sleep. What should we get? 7 to 8 hours. That's realistic. You put sleep in there. You put exercise. You put personal development. You put work. Anything that your day consists of, you have to put it in there. Now, will things change over time? Will you get sick, or will somebody else get sick? Will you have more demands? Yes, but that's for me is always the starting point. Whenever I coach anybody, whenever I suggest what is one of the first things I would do is control your time. Look at your schedule in the simplest form and figure out how your day goes. What you're going to find realistically is most people really have 30 hours, but they try to squeeze into 24. It's up to you as a person on how you adjust that time, because once again, you're not getting more than a second past 24 hours. Maximize it. Figure out how to take certain things. Maybe if you find yourself on social media a lot, maybe you cut that down to 30 minutes a day or an hour. Or if you find yourself going to the gym for 3 hours a day when you really only have an hour, whatever it might be, you have to be realistic. Cutting your sleep isn't the answer, because while a lot of us think, or we see different motivational speakers or athletes say, oh, I only get 3 to 4 hours, the brain says something completely different. The brain says that you need 7 to 8 hours. If that is what it says, that's what you need. You can't cut that. But you got to figure out what works for your schedule. And I tell people, especially leaders that are starting to hit that fatigue mark, you got to control your time. You have to look at it daily and plan. I know it's tough to plan, but you have to. If not, you will find your day slipping away and that fatigue increasing to where you get to that point where you can't even think anymore.
When you talk about leadership and leading teams at that level, you need a level of clarity in
Mhm,
order to get some people to go from here to there. And
mhm,
a lot of times, that simple time management routine, right? How to fill in things in your day to day is one of the most potent things you could do, because you kind of do away with the riffraff, right? The time sappers and the activities that don't lead to your goals, right? And
mhm.
you mentioned the social media. I, for one, had them all on my device, and here in the last 2 weeks, I said I'm taking them off, and I
Mhm.
did. I took them off. Guess what? I'm on walks now. Because I'm not
Got your time back.
looking. Yeah, I'm
Mhm,
not looking for that little red signal that says something came in, right?
mhm,
And it was sapping a lot of my time
mhm.
for activities that did not result in anything positive. And so I love that you shared that, and that's very, very important. Talking about decision making at the leadership level, how does fatigue impact decision making, problem solving, and overall effectiveness in leadership roles? And what techniques can leaders employ to mitigate the negative effects?
Fatigue definitely hits you at every level. And the higher you go, the more roles you're involved in. And we could say leadership's at any level. We could say a professional setting where you're a CEO, first line supervisor, middle manager, or maybe just leading a family. Maybe you're a father, maybe you're a mother, maybe you're just a bigger brother to a younger brother. Whatever that might be or whatever that might look like, fatigue hits you. When you find yourself at that level of fatigue, just saying, boom, it's hitting you, that's when you got to slow down. You have to. And there's different techniques out there. There's different strategies people use. I like something called the 6 second method. It's quite simple. You find yourself in a room or wherever that's quiet. You breathe in for 6 seconds. You breathe out for 6 seconds. You do that for about 10 times per sitting. And what you end up finding yourself is that you slow down everything. Everything that's been hitting you, everything that's been drawing in your attention. And then you say, you know what? This makes sense. I can remember times as a leader, or a time as a leader, that I worked probably 60 or 70 hours in a week. And this might have been during COVID. Actually, this was during COVID. The situation just popped up to my head. And I remember all the decisions that I had to make. I had to figure out what my employees were going to do for the day. I had to figure out what I didn't have employees wise, because people were either sick or they were with their loved ones, whatever it might be. And I got tired. I got fatigued. And I was trying to make these decisions and I was trying to problem solve. And I was like, man, what is wrong with me? Then I realized that one, my sleep was out of balance. And there were so many things going on, I never gave myself time to process. I was able to use something like renewal, and it allowed me to bring everything back to the moment. Like, okay, I have all this going on, but for 60 seconds, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 6 minutes, whatever it was, I was able just to stop. And when your brain's able to just do that, you will see results. I can tell you, I see them every time I have happens. Whenever I have a lot of stuff going on, I will literally go to this 6 second method and find myself just bringing everything and slowing it down to the point to where when I come out of this 6 second method routine, I'm able to start capturing my ideas again. Now, this doesn't replace actual resting. This doesn't replace eating right, exercising, managing your time. This just gives you a pretty quick momentary relief so your brain has time to catch up. Because if not, your brain's going to be racing all the time. You're going to find yourself just like you're a hamster on a wheel, just spinning like this. But sometimes you have to take that little hamster, come off the wheel, use a 6 second method, regain your composure, and then get back on the wheel. And that allow your brain to kind of catch up with itself. But that's one of the things I combat or use to combat fatigue, especially in the moment, because it's something you can do anywhere. Like I said, you can do it in a room, you could do it in your car, you could literally do it in any space, but you have to get to a point to where there's no distractions. Like you don't want to be doing it when you're on the phone or the pod or a podcast like this. You don't want to be doing when you're in a meeting. You have to be isolated away from everybody. Anything that could distract, but make sure your phone's on silent so you don't get those social media notifications. Wherever it is, it has to be silent so you can allow your brain to catch up and work. Trust me, your brain will appreciate it. You just got to try it.
I love that. And, you talk about uh, an initial step, right? We'll be talking about self care here in a second,
Mhm.
but an initial step to give yourself some breathing room. And a lot of times we
Mhm.
negate the power of just that deep breath. It's amazing, folks. You could do it while you're listening to this right now.
Yep.
That deep breath, it just kind of puts everything at home. Everything's at bay.
Mhm.
It's just amazing how one simple thing can be so powerful. So I hope you listening out there will take Michael on that and actually take time to breathe. Now we talked about self care. So what role does self care play in combating fatigue for leaders, and what specific self care practices have been found most beneficial in replenishing energy and maintaining resilience?
For me, the number one thing you can do to replenish your energy is sleep. It's the literally the easiest thing you can do. Now, I've had other people in the past tell me, "Well, Michael, my brain's always like I have a hard time sleeping, or I have this, and this." I understand, but if there's one thing you can do that you have to try to control, once again, we go back to that 24-hour formula, is literally incorporate sleep. Yes, eating better helps out a lot. I know there's different studies out there that talks about how to eat certain foods like yogurt, blueberry, intermittent fasting, which I just started doing recently. All those do work. Exercising 3 to 5 times a week at moderate levels, which is anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes, that works. Going back to resting and allowing your brain to recover like anything else is my number one thing I always tell leaders. I say, okay, let's look at your rest cycle. How many hours are you sleeping per night? If they start telling me 3 to 4, I was like, well, before you can do anything else as far as correcting some of this or combating some of this fatigue, you need to go take a nap. You need to go rest. Even naps. I was reading a book by Daniel Pink called When, and I reference it in my own book. But one of the things he talks about are naps. Like take 20 to 30-minute naps. Anything after that, your body kind of go in that really deep REM sleep that you don't want. That's why when we say we're taking a nap for an hour or two, which I love, and I know I shouldn't take them, our body gets too deep of a sleep. But you take 20 30-minute naps throughout the day. If you're able to learn how to do that, it's not going to come in the first time you try it. Trust me, you're going to want to sleep for 2 to 3 hours. It gives your brain that time. So naps, rest, whatever that may look like for you, you got to get to those goals. You have to. I don't know how else I can sell sleeping. Um, for people that are very high chargers or they're in high high capacities of leadership, they will tell me and they will swear it that they will say, you know what, I'm too busy. If you're looking for a way to combat fatigue, that's kind of the best way to do it is you're going to have to rest and you will be at a higher performance level for that high stress position you're in if you rest. Because at the end of the day, we both know that everybody wants you to make the best decisions. They don't come to you to not solve a problem. But if they realize that you're going on 2 or 3 hours of sleep and you're just winging it and you can do a lot better with 7 hours of sleep, they're going to appreciate that a lot more. It's up to you and it's obviously your own mission to figure out what can I do. I know for Michael, the last 6 to 8 months, I've been able to get myself in different roles where I'm actually able to sleep more often. And I can tell you, I've seen a performance in everything increase. And did I measure it by percentage? No, but I can probably guess about 25% better. And just thinking, my speaking business, my when I write, my social media, everything that I have done professionally has increased. Time with my family, I have more time for that. I find myself traveling more places to go see them, friends, all because I've been controlling my rest and put myself in environments where I don't have as much stress. Now, some environments, you're always going to be stressed no matter what, but you have to find that time to turn it off and actually allow your body to recover, and that's through sleeping.
I absolutely agree. And I tell you that when I don't get the appropriate amount of time for sleep, it affects me the entire day. There's going to be some
Mhm.
type of influence on that lack of sleep, especially if it's like I find I woke up several times during the night. That break
Mhm.
up, and I'm one that if I open my eyes, I'm like, oh, it's time to go. And sometimes it's 3 in the morning. So, very true, very powerful. And I hope that folks listening are prioritizing sleep. Uh, yeah. And I agree, Michael. There's some that will say, yeah, I just don't got no time. Well, your body will make time for you
It'll catch up.
sooner
That's you.
or later.
That's why you find people with other medical conditions increasing a lot more than others. I mean, they're not resting, and that's whenever you get sick. What's the first thing the doctor says? Go rest. Go relax, calm your body down. So if that's what's being prescribed mostly, then we can do all that ahead of time. We don't have to wait for a doctor or a therapist or a counselor to say, you need to go rest. You need to slow down. Your body will tell you over time that this is too much. Anybody can do things for short amounts of time, but if we're looking at being that high level, that developed leader over a sustained period of time, you have to get that rest in, real rest.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Now, let's talk about maybe an example you may have of overcoming fatigue and getting revitalized, um, and what lessons you learned from your specific challenge.
So for me, whew, dang, there's been so many times where I felt fatigued, especially in leadership roles. And probably about 2 years ago, I'm not gonna say I hit my peak of leadership fatigue, but I definitely saw it coming up, and I felt myself being a lot less. What's the best word to use for this? I found myself being a lot less energetic in my responses and being positive as I should be. And when I realized that, that was during the same time that I was starting to learn more about self awareness and my own journey on how to get into that level. And honestly, I just started using some of the techniques I've talked about. I started to re engage the 24-hour formula. And I want people to understand that when I say things that I say, it's all because I've been through it. And do I slip and do I forget to do my 24-hour plan on certain days? Of course I do. Do I not always implement my 6 second method when I'm feeling fatigued? Yes, I miss it. But when I realize what's going on and I actually implement these two strategies, it helps me out. So getting back to that time 2 years ago, so I felt the peak going up. I felt my decision making was getting a little. It wasn't at the level it needed to be. It was a little shaky. And I sat down. I was like, man, what is going on with me? I I got my sleep going pretty decent. I was doing like 5 or 6 hours, which I thought was good. And obviously it's not. Then I start thinking, you know what? I need to put some of these strategies into place. I know I used them in the past. I know I've researched great information on them. So I started to implement them. And within probably 2 weeks, I literally saw a change in my ability to overcome some of this fatigue. Now, I still get fatigued even till today, but whenever I implement these strategies, it really, and I promise you, it helps me out. Now, once again, different things work for different people, but there's always a foundation. Sleeping, time management, using any kind of process of renewal, like the 6 second method, all those are foundational that you have to be able to have in your toolbox because we all get overwhelmed. Because can we control everything? No, we can't. And when I went through some of the things I've gone through, I realized that myself. I was like, okay, I can't control this. I can't control that. Definitely can't control that over there. What am I going to do to overcome it? And the main things for me was literally consistently executing my 24-hour formula and consistently implementing that 6 second method. And as I did that 2 weeks later, I found myself in a better mental stage. I felt that the fatigue that was still being pushed, I was handling it a lot better. Because once again, like I was telling you earlier, you can't control your circumstances. You can't completely just eradicate stress. And if you're in one of those positions that always puts you in a stressful, like being a CEO of a Fortune 500 company or being a prison warden, being a chief of police, running anything where you're at the top and there's a lot of people under you that are following you and you're leading, you're going to be at that high level. But you got to look at different things like what can I do as a leader to put myself in that stressful or take myself out of that stressful mindset. Renewal, that 6 second method, time management, and obviously sleep consistently. But for me, that's how I overcame it. I actually executed on my two areas that I had been studying a lot and researching and talking about. And I was like, you know what? I can't let myself go longer than a week without truly executing this. And consistency for me has always been one of the biggest things that really moved the needle on growth and how you handle fatigue. Because fatigue's going to be consistent, so you got to combat it consistently as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, you have to be able to defense offense when this thing comes up
Mhm,
because you have to know what role it's playing with you and what role you're going to play with it. You don't want to be on the losing end, folks, when you're talking
mhm,
about fatigue and getting burned out or getting into a stressful situation where you're you potentially can have some physical ailment. This is the time for us to be able to say, all right, what tools do I have? What
mhm.
techniques, as you have shared so well, Michael, do I have that I can throw at this thing in order to regain not only my composure, but my control? And that's really where it's at. So, Michael, what do you have coming up, and how can people get a hold of you if they want you to go speak or maybe teach something, or get some of your books?
Well, for me, one of the things that I do pretty consistently, and I go present at different conferences, whether it's a 45 minute to 1 hour keynote or usually a seminar that's 4 to 8 hours, whatever that might be, my goal is to bring this. And when I say bring this, is bring strategies to help people overcome what they're going through, specifically in the area of fatigue. That's why I have my one of my keynote presentations called From Fatigue to Fulfillment, techniques to recapture your energy. You know why? Because we all run low on it. And for me, although I know we joked about it at 6 a.m., I don't drink caffeine. I don't drink, or when I say caffeine, I don't drink coffee. I don't drink tea. I don't do nothing extra. The only thing I started off with was this bottle of water. And yes, it's in Korean. But literally, that's because for me, energy comes from within. And just kind of like developing the leader within, so does your energy. I've been able to use these techniques and share them with people. And through keynote presentation, it's really been transformational, not just for them, but for me, because I love the stories that I hear. So when people are looking for a speaker that talks about that, especially someone that comes from a background that you don't have to look deep into to realize that it's stressful, and that's law enforcement, I'm able to share these strategies and tips and give them to people. Like, for me, what I discovered in my 30 plus years is while these techniques are all simple, we don't hear them enough. We don't hear, hey, you need to go sleep. Hey, you need to go work on renewal. Hey, you need the time management. We still don't hear it enough because people are still struggling. So, part of my keynotes is bringing out that information and sharing them with them and saying, you know what, this is what I've been through. These are my struggles, whether it was homelessness, whether it was traumatic events during my law enforcement career where I've had babies die in my hands or I've had to save people's lives, whatever that might be. Insert your story. But hearing it from someone that's been through something lets you know that what you have going on can be helped. And that's what I bring with my keynotes. Now, one of the things that I have been promoting a lot more lately, and I think it's kind of like a byproduct of what I have been doing, is I have a course called the 6 Week Speaker because people have consistently asked me, hey, Michael, how did you get into speaking? Well, really, it started off with focusing on speaking. For example, working on my skill set, whether that was through Toastmasters, the John Maxwell certification, get my master's in business. All those areas helped guide me to where I'm at today. And in my online course, it's a smaller course. It's like 10 modules. It gives you techniques you can use right now. If you say you just want to be a better communicator, how do I do that? Or you want to go get your first paid speaking engagement. I promise you, you can do that within 6 weeks from today. If you've never done any kind of speaking, and I say that confidently because I realized when I focused on something for a period of time, it was easier for me to get into. And I will also say for anybody listening to this, I'll give you a promo code to take 10% off the course. So the course is usually only $50. So we'll take another 10% just for being an audience member for you guys. So if you're looking for me, that's my course, the 6 Week Speaker that I'm pushing right now. But you can find me through LinkedIn, Michael Laidler, my YouTube channels, Michael Laidler. My website is michaelalaidler.com. And then my email address, if you want to directly reach out to me, is michael@michaelalaidler.com.
Outstanding. Well, folks, that was something to celebrate, folks. You're getting a discount code. Good Lord. I was not expecting that, but thank you, Michael, for offering that for your course. And we're going to have all of that as part of the video and show notes for you to be able to get a hold of Michael. We'll add his book, we'll add anything else that will lead you to him. But, Michael, thank you for being with me, sharing this, your tips and your advice on getting and overcoming this thing that ails a lot of leaders, which is fatigue, burnout, and stress. It's something so important.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity to be on here. Obviously, we're all leaders in some format or another, whether or not you have a title, and fatigue does hit you. And it's probably hitting some of you right now. Use these techniques. Use techniques you hear from other leaders, but use something because the world needs you. People want you to be around, and your ability to perform at a high level, it will be controlled by what you do and how you handle yourself.
Absolutely. Folks, I want to remind everybody that today's episode is sponsored by Fantail Services and Superpass, which are powering our website and app, Southern Sweet and Sassy Coffee, The Outlier Project, and Duco. If you've enjoyed this episode and learned something interesting about the topic covered today, make sure to subscribe and let us know by leaving a comment. And we're always looking for new ideas and guests that we can add to our show. So if you know someone or have a topic that you would like featured on the podcast or want to sponsor our show, we'd love to hear about it by emailing us at triadleadershipsolutions@gmail.com. And this podcast is brought to you by StreamYard, a browser based tool that lets you live stream to any platform and record podcasts in studio quality and even host webinars. It's built for creators like me to make our job way easier. And we just use it to record this podcast. And be sure to tune in next week for another episode where we dissect leadership from another angle. And as we like to end the show, success to you.